The Skeptic Zone is brought to you by Dr. Bob's Trivia Quiz. Visit drbobsquiz.wordpress.com and see if you can match wits with Dr. Bob.
Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone for December the 14th, 2014. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia. This is show number 321. Coming up on this week's show, an interview with a good friend of mine, an old buddy of mine, Dr. Paul Willis from the Royal Institution of Australia. You hear it here every week on the Skeptic Zone, www.riaus.org.au. You know it so well. I've been meaning to visit the Royal Institution for a long time. A couple of weeks ago, I finally did it as part of the James Randi tour, an Evening with James Randi tour. Oh, hello, Fred. You come to join me for the Skeptic Zone. Hello, Fred. It's Fred the Skeptical Cat. Why don't you sit there. It's like herding cats. Anyway, yes, I went to the Royal Institution of Australia, caught up with Paul Willis on his birthday, which was a lot of fun, and we chat about, lots of things, including digital disruption. Sort of like feline disruption, isn't it, Fred? Yeah. Thank you. What? Really? You're skeptical of what? Sorry, what? Following that, it is a week in science from the Royal Institution of Australia. And then we have a special guest reporter. I won't tell you who. You can find that out later for yourself when that segment comes up. Lately in Australia, there's been a kerfuffle, a flap, a to-do about raw milk. Oh yes, raw milk. You can bathe in it or you can throw it away. Personally, I think it should be thrown away, but some people like to bathe in it, or do they? I doubt that. I'm pretty skeptical about that. Raw milk's been sold in this country as a bath product, and our guest reporter has something to say about that following the recent death of a small child. Quite a serious report coming up. Then it's Maynard's Spooky Action. Maynard interviews people who attended the James Randi talk here in Sydney. The movie An Honest Liar and then the talk. Rounding off with an interview with Lawrence Leung, the comedian, skeptical comedian, who was chatting to Randi on stage in Sydney. And Lawrence is going to be discussing, amongst other things, his skepticism of Santa Claus. There's a warning for you. A skeptical look at Santa Claus. Fred, what do you want for Christmas? What's that? A new cat post? Oh, we'll see what we can do. Then right at the end of the show, a small tribute to a friend of mine who passed away a few days ago. An inspiration of mine, the magician Steve Walker. Very sorry to hear about Steve's passing, indeed. But for now, I'm not going to run downstairs because I've got something right here. It's a bowl of rice crackers. Grab your rice crackers and join me in listening to The Skeptic Zone. Here in Adelaide, glorious Adelaide. I'm about to, my arm's been twisted, I'm about to enjoy a nice glass of wine with my dear friend Dr. Paul Willis. Hello, Paul.
How are you, Richard?
Particularly well.
You're looking more and more handsome as we grow old, because your physiognomy seems to have tracked mine throughout time.
It's odd, isn't it? It's very strange, and I must wish you a very happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
And of course we were here last night visiting the fine Royal Institution of Australia, www.riaus.org.au. I got that memory off by heart. For an evening with James Randi, and everybody I think had
What a spectacular night. It was a terrific night. He's just such a gentleman. You were the consummate host.
Thank you.
It was a wonderful evening.
I certainly enjoyed it. But what a thrill it is for me. I've been telling my listeners for years, one day I'll get to RiAus, and I finally did. And I'm so impressed. What a wonderful building you have.
Yeah, well, we've got the old stock exchange. It was built in 1901 as the Adelaide Stock Exchange. It worked until 1991 when everything went digital and everything went off to the East Coast. In that time, though, the stock exchange building hosted Don Bradman as a stockbroker.
Yeah.
That's what he did after he gave up cricket. And also, we found this, by the way, if you can hear it, folks, is the wine arriving. Most important event. But also, all the shares in Poseidon, that famous misadventure in Australian stockbroking,
yes,
they were all sold in my office.
In your office, that's fascinating. Well,
so that was the claim to the fame of the building, and it was repurposed as the Science Exchange in the mid-2000s, and we opened our doors in 2009.
Well, Paul, for many reasons, happy birthday in cheers.
My pleasure.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Not bad for 11 o'clock in the morning, is it?
Well, we do have to make exceptions. That's a nice drop.
We do things well in that.
You do, and please tell me more about the TV, the new TV venture.
RiAus TV.
Yes.
It's Australia's science channel. At the moment, it's an on-demand service, and we are not only putting up our own material, but the best science audio-visual material we can lay our hands on. There's a couple of sources. I'm not at liberty to say who they are at the moment, but we're doing deals with a number of different groups, a number of different institutions to put up their audio-visual offerings all around science. And my distinct hint to the Australian skeptical community is you need to have a vodcast, you need to have a monthly video, and let's talk about putting it out on RiAus TV.
Well, the predecessor for the Skeptic Zone was a podcast.
Okay.
It was, but,
right.
But it was, as you can appreciate, it was weekly, and it was quite a task.
Yeah.
Quite a task.
Oh, yeah.
Monthly sounds appealing.
Yeah, well, you can go out and get sponsorship, because we will allow sponsorship on RiAus TV. It's accessible, it's specifically designed to be accessible via tablets, smartphones and computers. You can also pick it up on an internet-capable television. Basically anywhere that you can pick up an on-demand television service, such as ABC or iView or any of those, you can get RiAus TV.
It's the way of the future, isn't it?
Well, exactly. This is all part of the whole digital disruption. I don't know how closely you've been following that, but it's a wave of how digital technology and online technology is completely redefining our whole society.
Yeah.
So if you look at things like Uber, for instance, it's going into competition with the taxi industry, with the unfair advantage that it doesn't have to invest in all of that infrastructure that the taxi companies had to do. Or you look at Airbnb, they can compete in the hotel market without all of the infrastructure that the old school hotels had to put in, and they're carrying as a liability in these days. Well, this is digital disruption in the television space.
Yeah.
We are actually now operating in the television space, but we haven't had to commit to buying television stations and aerials and all of that infrastructure that the television stations have had to do. But also, because we go online, it means that we don't have to have a license. So we can do dangerous and interesting things. Like last year we did World Vasectomy Day.
Yes.
We performed 17 vasectomies live to camera and broadcast it to the world.
Yeah.
It was picked up by Reuters, and literally we got global coverage.
Yeah.
We were able to do that as a way of talking about men's health issues, family planning, world population. So we can do the... What other television station's going to do that? No one.
No one.
Yeah, it's territory. We can be dangerous. We can do things differently. My direction to my staff is, I want you to find the boundaries with your rear vision mirror. Go out there and break every boundary you can. The worst that can happen is we have to say sorry and pull our heads in.
Well, yes. That's true. That's true. Tell me, what other events do you have here in Adelaide? Because not having been here before, I don't know what I imagined the building would be like as I approached it, but I discovered it's sort of nestled in between other buildings.
In some ways, it's a bit like the Great Albert Hall in London, in that you can be half a block away and not know it's there, and then there it is, tucked in behind all the other buildings. It's the same with RiAus, where we're surrounded by skyscrapers. You are, yeah. The Adelaide version of a skyscraper. But then it's this little oasis of culture and intellectual thinking right in the heart of the city. We do, because we have a national remit, we don't tend to hold events that only people in Adelaide can access. So we deliberately construct events that we can live stream.
Yeah, and you've got just the place to do it.
Exactly.
Where we had the evening with James Randi last night, it's a wonderful, intimate, what would you call it? A theaterette, a theatre, a space?
It's a studio. A studio auditorium.
Yeah.
And most importantly, it's got a bar.
I noticed.
It suits me perfectly.
I certainly noticed that. And all the cameras are there, and the equipment is there. It's quite something.
So we can actually set it up as quite an intimate space, but because of the online capacity, where we can live stream in high definition, we can actually expand that audience nationwide, internationally.
Yeah.
We regularly will have events where we had a grant writing workshop in there earlier this year. We had a team in the Netherlands participating in the grant writing workshop. We had a live stream conversation with Antarctica, and people in the United States and the United Kingdom were asking questions of me on stage in Adelaide to ask of Antarctica, all in real time because we can do it online.
Yeah. So it's the key phrase, isn't it? Digital disruption.
Yeah.
I guess in its own way, something like the Skeptic Zone podcast is a digital disruption to mainstream radio.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Digital disruption is all around us, and it really has to be watched. Another startling factor, or a factoid to keep in mind around digital disruption. You go back 10 years ago, if you wanted to start up a company, basically you needed $1 million. That was the average startup cost for a company.
Yeah.
Now it's $5,000. $5,000.
10 years. That's
because
staggering.
you don't have to invest in all of the infrastructure that you used to have to in order to set up a business. You don't even have to buy servers in order to store your data on. You do it all on the cloud. You rent the space on the cloud. Your HR systems and your personnel systems and your spreadsheets, all that sort of stuff, you just get that free off the cloud. Yeah. You don't have to invest in all of the bloody software or whatever. Yeah. So,
well, you're talking about the office basics like word processing, spreadsheets, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's all there.
It's all there.
Yeah.
And so now you have the unfair ability to compete with companies that have been around and have done the hard yards and have had to spend $1 million on infrastructure, and you can get in there and compete with them for $5,000.
Yeah, it's staggering, isn't it? And people are doing it.
Yeah, in every conceivable field.
Yeah, and if the enemies of reason are doing it, we should do it too.
Oh, most definitely. It's intriguing when you say the activities of the enemies of reason, because when you actually look at creationist websites, the creationists had bloody good websites really early. I mean, of course, their content was crap.
I think we know what you mean, yes.
But from the point of view of the presentation of their ideas, they nailed it early on that you need to have a high-quality presence on the internet through a good quality website. And the same's true of the homeopaths and the chiropractics. They all realised that you needed that online presence. And I wouldn't say that the skeptics have had to learn from them, but I think the uptake of the digital space has been a bit more relaxed from the skeptics. It was terrific to see things like the Skeptic Zone up and running, because that's exactly what needs to happen.
I would dare say, I take the point, but I dare say what the difference is that all these other sites you discuss, well, yes and no for the creationists, but certainly the psychics, the homeopaths and all those, it's first and foremost a business.
Yeah, indeed.
Whereas when you think of Australian skeptics and maybe the Skeptic Zone even and other things like that, it's not the core motivation is not business, it's getting our message across.
Yeah.
So maybe we can learn something from being a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit.
Well, taking the leaf out of the digital disruption, you don't have to be a business in order to set up a good quality web page. You know, when there was the business incentive to do it, because it cost you so much money to actually set up and run a website, then, you know, that was a deterrent to you guys because you weren't running as a business. But now that those costs are largely evaporated, you're free to get in there and compete with them. Recognise the competitive advantage that you've got in that you haven't had to go through all that bullshit.
That's right. Well, there's the word.
Exactly.
Well, Paul, we'll wrap it up now. You won't believe the schedule I'm on for this week. I'm just about to fly to Perth, then to Brisbane, then to Melbourne, then back to Sydney. But what a thrill it is to spend a week with James Randi. But it's certainly a great pleasure to catch up with you, my old friend.
Yeah.
To see the Royal Institution of Australia at long last.
Yeah. And can I also say thank you to the listeners. A number of them have come to me directly and said how much they appreciate a week in science on the Skeptic Zone.
That's
a terrific partnership. Yeah. We're only too happy for you guys to run with that. It's a match made in heaven.
It is.
Thank you.
And to sign off, Paul, how would you like to introduce this week's episode of A Week in Science?
Now, ladies and gentlemen, be prepared to be blown away. Learn something you may not have known before. Coming up is A Week in Science.
Welcome to A Week in Science from RiAus, bringing you the science you need to know. It's that blue fuzz you might have fished out of your belly button. But what is belly button lint? And do guys get it more than women? Yeah, seriously, we're doing this. It's the question we've always asked ourselves. Where does it come from? And why is it always blue? Today, we're finding an answer. Believe it or not, Australia's ABC ran a nationwide survey to find out about Australia's belly button lint. They discovered that men have more belly button lint. And generally, the older you get, the more you have. Most people who had belly button lint were hairy, and nearly all had an innie belly button. Only 8% of people who said they had belly button lint had a navel ring. And many people reported that the production of belly button lint reduced or disappeared when they got a navel ring. So that's the facts. Now let's look at the theory of what causes it. The most plausible theory is that the hairs on your stomach cause small abrasions in your clothes, causing fabric fibres to fall off and get trapped. The hairs on your stomach generally point towards your belly button, so natural movements push the fibres along the hairs into the belly button where it combines to form a ball. This hair movement theory would explain the difference between people with lots of body hair and those without. In fact, if you shave your stomach, belly button lint formation reduces. Belly button lint isn't only just fabric fibres though. The little balls also contain skin, sweat and dust. And now, 4 fast facts about your belly button. Although it has been claimed the ancient Egyptians started navel piercing, there is actually no historical evidence of it at all. The Belly Button Biodiversity Project aims to understand the bacteria in your belly button. They've found the amount and types vary widely from person to person. Whether you get an innie or an outie depends on the scar tissue that forms when your umbilical cord drops off. And an Australian man holds the world's largest collection of his own belly button lint, 22 grams collected over the course of 26 years. That's it for this Week in Science. For more information on belly buttons, go to the RiAus website, riaus.org.au. Follow us on Twitter at RiAus and like us on Facebook. I'm Ben Lewis, and we'll catch you next week.
Hi, this is Tim Farley. You probably know me from whatstheharm.net, a catalog of the real-world harm caused by lack of critical thinking. But that's not my only project. I present at Skeptic events. I post a daily Skeptic history fact on Twitter and Facebook. And I blog about using new techniques on the internet to advance skepticism. Come over to skeptools.com and check out my latest ideas. But first, enjoy the rest of the Skeptic Zone.
Hi everyone, I'm Heidi Robertson from the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. Richard has been kind enough to have me as a guest reporter this week, although I'm not actually going to be talking about vaccination this time. Well, okay, maybe mentioned a little bit. On Thursday the 11th of December 2014, news broke in Australia of 4 children who had become seriously ill and a 3-year-old who had died, following ingestion by all children of raw cow's milk that came from a small dairy farm on the Mornington Peninsula in Victoria. It is illegal in Australia to sell raw milk for consumption. But let's cover a bit of background information first. Raw cow's milk is simply milk from the cow that has not been pasteurised. Pasteurisation, a process developed by Louis Pasteur, is a process that heats milk to a specific temperature for a set period of time, with the purpose of killing bacteria that are potentially dangerous for consumption. According to the CDC website, quote, before the invention and acceptance of pasteurisation, raw milk was a common source of the bacteria that cause tuberculosis, diphtheria, severe streptococcal infections, typhoid fever, and other foodborne illnesses. These illnesses killed many people each year, especially young children, end quote. And from the Victorian Department of Health, quote, everybody is vulnerable to illness associated with the consumption of unpasteurised milk. However, the risks are even greater for children, the elderly, anyone who is immunocompromised or has underlying health problems, and pregnant women, end quote. Pasteurisation has been used in Australia since the early 1900s, becoming standard practice in the mid-1950s. Processing requirements in the Australian-New Zealand Food Standards Code require that, quote, milk intended for human consumption is pasteurised or equivalently processed to eliminate pathogenic bacteria that may be present. The National Food Standards Setting Body recently completed an extensive assessment of raw cow's milk and concluded that the risk to the public was too high to change the current processing requirement, end quote. This review was completed this year, in 2014. The Chief Health Officer in Victoria, Dr. Rosemary Lester, said that the 3-year-old who died, as well as 2 of the other children affected, had hemolytic uremic syndrome, which the Victorian Department of Health says is a rare condition affecting the kidneys and bloodstream, which can lead to renal failure and death, and can be caused by a type of E. coli found in the gut of cattle. The other 2 children who became seriously ill had cryptosporidiosis, a parasitic infection. Mountain View Farm, owned by Vicky Jones, is the small dairy farm at the centre of the controversy. On their website, mountainvieworganic.com, they state that they run a herd of 150 Jersey and Jersey Cross cows. They offer customers a share in this herd. As per the website, quote, a herd share is a group of people owning an interest in a herd. They collectively buy a herd, in this case a dairy herd, and pay a farmer to manage and care for their cows. each herd owner is then entitled to a portion of the herd's produce, end quote. Now, while it is illegal to sell raw cow's milk for consumption in Australia, it is perfectly legal to sell it for cosmetic purposes. Mountain View Farm packages their raw milk labelled as bath milk. It is sold alongside other drinks in health food stores and packaged in a similar way to pasteurised milk. Seeing pictures of the raw milk alongside drinking milk in stores, one might be forgiven for assuming that the raw milk is in fact okay to drink if the label was not looked at carefully. In labelling it both as bath milk and not for human consumption, it becomes a beauty product. Mountain View Farm sells 1 litre of bath milk for $3.50. As one Facebook commentator pointed out, quote, "It will cost over $150 to have a milk bath with their product. Unless you are Cleopatra, who the hell has milk baths anymore?" End quote. The Age this week reported that a health food shop, who was a high-volume seller of the raw milk from Mountain View Farm, said it was common knowledge that customers purchased it to drink, despite it being labelled for cosmetic use only. He said, quote, "No one's admitted to bathing in it. Everyone has a bit of a laugh about that." End quote. Vicky Jones, the owner of Mountain View Farm, has admitted to ABC News that she drinks the milk herself. She went on to say to the Herald Sun, quote, "We put warnings on our milk for people not to drink it, and we always tell them it is not to be consumed." End quote. She went on to say, quote, "Parents are irresponsible if they actually give raw milk to their children." End quote. These statements are made despite the farm's About page on their website, stating in the description about themselves, their milk and yoghurt is incredibly tasty. This page has since been taken down, although several people with foresight have captured the page along with other material that may be likely to be taken down. The day after this story broke, Mountain View Farm posted the following on their Facebook page, which is called Mountain View Farm Share, and that page has also since been taken down. Here's the quote. "What a day we had yesterday, waking up to the disgusting front page of the Herald Sun. Shame on the reporter and the people that were behind that piece of rubbish that was written. To the health department, you have opened a hornet's nest, not for raw milk, but for exposing the garbage that consumers are fed, the chemical-laden pesticides, herbicides, antibiotics that are used to grow food to feed families. Shame on the system that allows this. Shame on food safety standards that permit and make up the levels they deem safe. Look at how many people are sick. Why are our hospitals overflowing? Why is good quality food so expensive and out of reach of young families on low wages, the very people that need to feed our future generation? Today is the start of a change in the world. For communities and farmers, we will grow and educate farmers to grow food without chemicals and antibiotics, and we will educate families, and we will make sure that everyone is fed, from the young to the very old." End quote. Hardly the response one would expect to see from a business claiming that their product is only sold for cosmetic purposes, and specifically stating that they will make sure everyone from the young to the very old is fed is probably a foolish thing to say, given that these are two of the vulnerable groups that will suffer the most as a result of these infections, and given that a 3-year-old has just passed away. It has been widely speculated on social media of the farm's legal or ethical responsibility with regards to the death and illness of these children, or whether it was the parents' responsibility, or was it both? Either way, it is a tragic outcome and one that shouldn't happen. Speaking now as a parent myself, much of what we decide on for our kids is weighed up according to the risk to the child versus the benefit to the child. Should I let him climb that tree? Should I vaccinate my child? The answer to that, of course, is yes, unless the child has a legitimate medical reason not to be. Should I let him have that extra slice of chocolate cake? Do I let him have a ride on that trail bike? Because ultimately we as adults have to make the best decisions on their behalf. They rely on us for it. So what is the risk-benefit analysis for letting a child consume raw milk? Well, raw milk proponents have a wide variety of views on the benefit of raw cow's milk, as I found out. Here are a sample of the testimonials I found on various pages of the interwebs, ranging from plausible to not so plausible. Raw milk tastes better, it's thicker, it's creamier, it aids digestion, it gets rid of or prevents allergies and asthma. It aids in the treatment of osteoporosis, arthritis, digestive disorders, fatigue, weight loss, and even cancer. And the old favourite, it boosts the immune system. So are there any quality studies showing benefits of raw milk over pasteurised? Well, this year a policy statement was put out jointly by the Committee on Infectious Diseases, the Committee on Nutrition, and the American Academy of Pediatrics, titled Consumption of Raw or Unpasteurised Milk and Milk Products by Pregnant Women and Children. It is stated here, with regards to the infections that can occur from the ingestion of raw milk, quote, these infections can occur in both healthy and immunocompromised individuals, including older adults, infants, young children and pregnant women and their unborn fetuses, in whom life-threatening infections and fetal miscarriage can occur. Efforts to limit the sale of raw milk products have met with opposition from those who are proponents of the purported health benefits of consuming raw milk products, which contain natural or unprocessed factors not inactivated by pasteurisation. However, the benefits of these natural factors have not been clearly demonstrated in evidence-based studies and therefore do not outweigh the risks of raw milk consumption. Substantial data suggest that pasteurised milk confers equivalent health benefits compared with raw milk without the additional risk of bacterial infections, end quote. On Friday, a mother of one of the children who recovered from hemolytic uremic syndrome spoke to the media, stating that her son developed diarrhoea and vomiting which lasted 10 days after he had sips of her smoothies made with Mountain View organic bath milk. She stated that at the time of his subsequent hospitalisation, he had only 20% kidney function and was seriously ill in hospital for a week. The baby has since recovered. The mother acknowledged that she had been blinded by the wider trend towards raw food, but said she was not aware of the serious risks associated with raw milk. She said, quote, if I had heard of anything like this happening to anyone, I wouldn't have brought it into my home. I wouldn't have consumed it myself. It was a wake-up call to make sure I'm no longer blinded by the latest trends. It was a wake-up call to make sure I'm making informed decisions for my family, end quote. There are other concerning aspects to this story. For example, the farm's Facebook page seems to like sharing links from Mike Adams, aka the Health Ranger, over at the Natural News website. One meme they shared has 2 columns. On the left is the title, FDA Says Safe, with a list including aspartame, MSG, artificial colours, propylene glycol, fluoride, SSRI antidepressants, antipsychotic drugs for soldiers, psychotropic drugs for kids, mercury in vaccines, chemotherapy for babies, autolyzed proteins, chemical preservatives, sodium nitrite, cow pus in milk, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, radiation, GMOs, chlorine, arsenic, aluminium, mercury in fish and BPA. In the right-hand column, the title FDA Says Dangerous has one thing underneath: fresh milk. It's these kind of fear-mongering memes that shock the scientifically illiterate. The old saying, the dose makes the poison, seems to have no place in the minds of certain fundamentalist groups. Another Natural News meme that was posted on the farm's Facebook page had nothing to do with raw milk or farming in general, but the rise in autism and how, quote, experts say vaccines have nothing to do with it, end quote. Or perhaps they were concerned about the cows developing autism. Although being a certified organic farm means that they do not have to vaccinate their herd, and in fact may only do so if there is a specific threat of an endemic vaccine-preventable disease, and even then they have to get a vet to sign a document stating this. It is interesting, however, that whilst the farm purports to be ethical and kind to animals, the use of antibiotics, vaccination, parasiticides and anaesthetics is discouraged except in cases of emergency. It's stated on the farm's herd share agreement, quote, "We have outstanding success with alternative treatments such as Manuka honey, garlic tinctures and homeopathic remedies and are committed to continuing," end quote. And, quote, "We use alternative methods of treating cows that would conventionally be treated with antibiotics. For example, if a cow is showing signs of mastitis, something very rare in our organic herd, they would be treated with Manuka honey. The honey is massaged onto the infected teat and surrounding udder area. This massage in itself is highly beneficial in clearing blockages that may be leading to mastitis," end quote. Now clearly, I hope, I'm not a cow, and I do not generally favour anecdotes. However, I have had mastitis myself post-pregnancy, which left me with a fever of 40 degrees and feeling like a sack of, well, cow manure. How it is deemed ethical to not give antibiotics for such a painful condition, I'm not too sure. At the time of writing, the ACCC has asked the Mountain View Farm to place a product recall on their website, which they have done. They have also taken down their Facebook page. In the meantime, the child's death is being investigated by the coroner, and we await the results. This has been Heidi Robertson of the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. You can find out more about our group at www.nrvs.info. Thank you.
Maynard here. Pull my cracker. No, that's not quite right. Maynard's handy tip. Did you know that next year, which I believe is referred to as 2015, you can reuse some of your old calendars? That's right, I'm sure you all just chuck them out and hoik them out when you've got a hangover on New Year's Day, but don't do that, folks. Keep them. I keep everything. In fact, this recording was made in 1957.
It is a significant occasion in the history of the British Empire.
In 2015, you can reuse your calendars from the following years. 1987. That'd be calendars with lots of shoulder pads on them. 1998. And 2009. As well as lots of other years, like 1925. So if your grandma's got something around there, it could be time to raid her calendar stash. Those years again, for those playing at home, 1987, 1998 and 2009 can be reused in 2015. Now, this year, I was reusing calendars, I think, from 2004, and I was able to use my Star Trek calendar from 2004, my Melrose Place calendar, I bet you're all jealous, from the 90s, and my Danny Minogue calendar. I bet you wish you lived at my place. So for this year, I've only found one. The 1998 vintage Helmut Newton arty calendar. It's very arty, very black and white, people not wearing much, but I'll be putting that up, underneath my kitchen table, I think is where I'll be putting that. So remember that, those winning years again for those of you with a supplementary, 1987, 1998 and 2009, get to it. Reuse those calendars. Remember, reduce, reuse and rewind your tape before you take it back to the video rental store. That's been Maynard's handy tip. Can we say that? Brought to you by Maynard.com.au, where you can find the Christmas episode of Bunga Bunga, A Very Bunga Bunga Christmas, in which Tim Ferguson says,
I wasn't at all offended. The guy's a scientist. He's probably never even seen a naked girl. He probably didn't even know what it was that was being depicted on his shirt.
Hey, silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Look, we're here with someone who's travelled a bit of a way. Who we got here?
It's Peter Young, and I've driven 3.5 hours to get here.
Yeah, look, and how was the movie An Honest Lie? You've just seen it there on the big screen. I deliberately didn't watch it until tonight. I wanted to see it fresh for the first time. And I was really impressed with the editing, the way it moved. It was never dull for a sec.
It was an amazing story, and I can't believe it's true.
Yeah. And I liked at the end when they said that the real Jose's, he missed his sister's wedding by 2 weeks, and everyone went, oh, I like that, yeah.
Oh, what a poor guy. Yeah. He only took 25 years to apply for a passport.
Well, he's lucky. He was supposed to be dead.
Oh, that's of course he was meant to be dead.
And what was the best bit of the movie? Was it some of the unveiling of the so-called psychics?
I thought that was fantastic. I'd seen the footage on TV from the 80s of Don Lane getting his shits and walking off, but I hadn't seen any of the other footage, and I thought I love that sort of stuff when people are revealed to be fraudsters. It was great.
I was just wondering why Randy never took it to the next level with Peter Popoff there and actually took a transmitter along on that frequency and started talking to Popoff at the same time.
Oh, what a great trick.
Yeah, that would have been pretty wild. Maybe it just was the technology wasn't available at the time.
Well, it's interesting. We still haven't learnt our lesson, and there are still fraudsters out there selling bullshit.
Yeah. And what do you reckon? Come on, let's be honest here. Is there a time you think you've been fooled? I bought a pet rock back in the day. I've got rose quartz at home.
I did get my palm read once in California.
Get out. And was it a very generic reading?
Very, very generic.
Okay, thanks. And would you reckon you could be called an honest liar?
Yes. Yes, if I'm telling the truth. No, if I'm not. There you go.
It's a bit of a testimony to the fact that we all like to self-deceive on some level.
Yes, I self-deceived myself that I would get here on time.
Craig, you've just seen An Honest Lie. What did you think?
I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, what was your favourite scene?
It's a really hard one. I mean, I think the scene where he was saying that he doesn't want it on film, and he obviously came back and changed his mind about that. But
yeah, because everyone watching's going, hang on, so either the guy's used it without the permission or he's changed his mind about it, yeah. And so I guess it means that we can all be deceived on some level about something, be it in our professional or our personal life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've all got secrets, I guess.
Well, is there something you think you've been deceived with, like of the woo or paranormal nature in your life, or something? You bought something, you went, hang on, I didn't need to get this.
Yeah, my mother took me for 2 years to an iridologist.
Wow.
2 years.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the thing I find about iridology is it's supposed to be the way you find out what stuff is, but yet they use other methods as well. So they might use iridology and they'll do some liver testing, or they'll look at things as well as that.
Yeah, it was really weird. I had these like supplements that he gave me for years.
So it was like a non-specific kind of cure for a non-specific problem.
It seemed to be that way, and in hindsight, I think it was.
Okay, well, yeah, wow, thanks a lot. I didn't expect that. Well, this is real hard-hitting stuff we're doing here. Well, you've just been to see An Honest Liar in there with all of us there. Did you have a favourite bit of Randy's story that you like?
Oh, that's a hard thing. No, it was all good.
There's a lot there. And when in the end, when all the extradition stuff was coming out and that, it was certainly interesting, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It really was.
I think it's great. It shows that no matter who we are, like you said, we can always be deceived by something, even in our personal life or whatever.
Definitely, and I think that's important to remember.
Yeah. Well, and what did you learn from the movie?
I loved it. I've been following Randy a lot on YouTube, saw a lot of his videos, so I'd seen the Steve Popoff story and some of the Uri Geller stuff. But it was really good to see more of who he is as a person. You see all the showmanship and everything like that, but to get a bit of an insight as to how he became interested in that, or who his influences were, and how he got. I found that really interesting.
Yes, and the fact that his father really only had 2 serious conversations with him in his entire life.
Yeah, that's remarkable. But I think it's a great comment on his character that he's able to joke about the fact that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, to me, that would be a devastating blow to my childhood. But he sort of used that and can laugh about it now, and I thought that was really inspiring.
I guess that's the way great performers do. They take something like that and try and turn around.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
And is there something you think you've fallen for in the world of woo or being self-deceived or something? Have you bought something you thought, I really shouldn't have got this, or something like that?
I think when I was a lot younger, I was quite naive, believing in the potential for psychics and whatnot. But then
I actually went and saw Uri Geller at the Civic Theatre in Newcastle. I got a free ticket, but I did go and see him, and I remember going, how does he do that? Now I know.
But I think becoming interested in people like Randi, like Darren Brown, like Richard Dawkins, people like that, and listening to them speak and hearing how common it is and how easy it is for people to be tricked and to sort of learn to use your mind and sort of not take everything just because that's what's being presented, but to look at evidence and things like that is very
critical thinking.
Absolutely.
Is there something you might have been fooled with in the past or yesterday? Or?
It's so embarrassing. Yeah, astronomy, tarot cards. I was into all of that crap.
I think it's astrology. The astronomers would get upset.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, what star sign are you, by the way?
Oh gosh, do we have to?
I'm Capricorn, which I'm pleased to say means nothing to me.
You seem like a Capricorn.
Exactly. I thought you'd say that. Yeah. Well, look, have a great time here. You're going to meet Randy. You know, he was on the Brady Bunch as well. I was waiting for his Brady Bunch clip to come up. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, sorry. I was thinking of the... what was the show that they showed?
Happy Days.
Yeah, Happy Days, that's right. Yeah.
Well, he got Fonzie to say his name. How many of us can say that?
No, not me.
Well, we're just at the meet and greet afterwards, and a few people are going to be seeing Randy doing his thing here. What did you think of the movie and the night tonight?
That was excellent. Actually, it was quite nice in the fact that I came expecting more of a logical explanation of debunking, and it strangely turned into a love story in some respects. So it was quite an interesting film. Fantastic film. More, I think, because of that. And so having the stuff you expected, but also the honesty in terms of his own personal relationships. And certainly the twist at the end. I'll stop the spoilers, but...
well, the fact that he came out as being gay and everyone was like, so what? That was really not the big issue, really, was it?
Yeah, no, but I think it was nice. It's addressed quite early in the film, matter-of-factly, as part of the thing. But no, excellent film.
And what did you think of the movie tonight?
Yeah, I thought it was great as well. I mean, I wasn't expecting the story that actually was presented.
Did you know of all the debunking that James has done in his life?
Most of it. I've seen it over the years, so it's good.
It's funny how Don Lane has played such an important part in the movie, really, wasn't it? That was a pretty pivotal moment.
I think it's quite fundamental, people certainly my age, in terms of that thing, because I think up till then most people tend to, you just, okay, whether it's true or not, Doris Stokes, whatever, that's fine, but I think that moment gave people to a point to say, call it hokum, to actually say this is rubbish, this really is, rather than just accepting it. So certainly for me it was part of that. But I honestly forgot the Richard Carlton story. I think I must have been away that week or something. But no, excellent, really excellent film.
There's some people that have travelled across New South Wales to be here tonight in Sydney. I believe you're from Bathurst.
That's right.
And why are you here tonight? You've travelled across the state to see an 86-year-old retired magician on stage talk about critical thinking.
Of course. Well, I've got to be honest, I heard that he was really amazing.
Did you think so?
He did not disappoint. It was a really wonderful film. Anyone out there who is thinking about seeing it or on the fence, they should definitely see it when they get the opportunity. And... become involved in skepticism when they can. I'm sure listening to this podcast, they're obviously interested.
And of all the sort of scams and things that he's busted, is there one that was shown in the film you went, hey, that was good?
I don't know about good. One of those reactions... you have the different reactions depending on the level of scam. You've got the things like pop-off where it's really great that he was able to hamper that. But the one that feels the best is probably Uri Geller on Carson, because it's just so fun to watch. So fun to watch him kind of...
because suddenly he can't do his illusions.
Yeah, feeling not feeling strong enough. Okay. That's always fun to see.
And I always ask people on the show this, what's your sort of woo that gets your back up the first? What's the woo that gets your goat?
That's a tough question. Maybe homeopathy just because there's so little to it. And I'm sure you've been in the situation where you're trying to talk through with someone, like, okay, so what do you feel like you get out of it, but what about these things and this? And then you get right down to the level where it's like, so basically at this point we've rewritten physics, and they're still like, yeah, but it makes me feel better. And then at that point it's kind of, well, we have to agree to disagree.
All right, and what's your name?
Hi, I'm Ella.
Also from Bathurst?
That is correct.
And what did you learn tonight from seeing the documentary on James Randi and hearing the man being interviewed on stage?
It definitely lives up to his main name of being quite amazing.
Well, is there a particular part of the movie, like in his personal life, that you found illuminating, or you went, oh, that's interesting?
I think it definitely appealed to my emotions, the story about his partner and him and the trials they went through, but also how he combated all these different types of people and what they were trying to sell and how they were harming the public. I think that's a really important story to get out, especially how he finished and closed the night, telling us always to be kind about it and to always, think of others before we maybe jump on the bandwagon and be a bit too harsh towards them. I think it's very important.
Oh, well, look, I'm going to see if I can find some more tapes of James Randi on the Don Lane show.
Yes, that looks fantastic. I remember when we were at the convention last weekend, Sunrise, they were showing that infamous tape, and it's unfortunately seems to be that's what Randy's associated with in Australia. It's really disappointing considering the work he has done, and especially with Dick Smith, the stuff they've come out and done for the public.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really disappointing that that's the one the media decides to throw around.
Look, and it's funny that even in the age of the internet, I reckon that you could still pull something like the car loss. It wouldn't be as easy, but you still could do it.
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah. It's people are really tricky with what they can do now. It's never end to surprise me.
That's great. Have you got many local skeptics in Bathurst or in that area?
No, we actually just met a few people from Orange here tonight, and we're sort of discussing starting up a Skeptics in the Pub, which would be absolutely amazing. It'd be great to get some more people involved. I definitely know there's some members of the community who are a bit reluctant to be coined with the name Skeptic, but they're really interested in the scientific critical thinking and rationale behind some of the claims that are sort of brought to them, especially scientists. So it would be great to reach out to the wider community and get some more people.
Yeah, look, even if you just got half a dozen people in a pub for a start off and you just had a back room and watched some, I don't know, old Cosmos videos or something, that'd be a kick-off.
Oh, it'd be amazing. It'd be definitely something I'd really like to work towards.
Look, we're backstage here again, and something I've got to ask Lawrence Leung is, what the hell is a mystifier?
A mystifier? That is a really good question. I think a mystifier is the name someone gives themselves when they can't admit that they're a magician.
Right, okay. It's a sort of a grey in between no man's land.
I think people can come up with many different types of names. There's mystifiers, there's astonishers.
That's a good one, an astonisher.
But it's also quite interesting when you look at the history of magic. It seems like a lot of especially in the golden age of magic, there's been so many magicians with the great or the incredible. I mean, James Randi's the amazing Randi, but we never hear about magicians who are mildly entertaining magicians or the ambiguously okay magician.
The equivocal.
Yeah.
Hey, and where do you think, because you know your magic and you know your history of magic, where does James Randi sit in the history of magic?
Oh, I would imagine as he was saying on stage tonight, he's been recognised by the Academy of Magical Arts as a living legend. And I believe that's truly where he stands in the pantheon of modern magic. Also, from my point of view, I read his book Conjuring by James Randi Esquire when I was a young teenager in the library, and what I loved about that particular book when I was starting out in magic as a very nerdy kid was the fact that it didn't teach you a single trick. It taught you more than that. It taught you about the history of magic, the genres of magic, the amazing names behind magic from all the countries of the world, the different types of magic. And it gave me this appreciation of something as an art form rather than, I need to learn a trick to fool someone. I learned about the true history and appreciation of it as an art.
Well, that's more valuable in some ways because you can just read how to do a trick, but if you can read the history of why you should do the trick, that's more important.
Well, yeah, I know, especially with this book in the library. If he taught some tricks in the book, I could steal this book from the library, but I didn't. I returned it. I've borrowed that book so many times from the library back then. And so it was so great on this tour, the Evening with James Randi tour, to meet him in person.
Look, it's not too hard work up there because you just give him a little nudge and he goes off on a great story.
Oh, I think he has a lot of stories. He's probably got a catalogue of impressive feats and situations and amazing points of view, and you only have to say a particular word and he's got a point of view on it or story about it. But he's so generous, he's so wise, he's so generous even backstage. He pulled
did you drink his absinthe? Has he got a wild bar going back there?
I know for certain James Randi does not touch alcohol or drugs. He prefers his mind to be completely clear.
Well, when you're dangling from a rope on a helicopter...
You have to be. Yeah. But yeah, backstage he pulled me aside and he taught me a magic trick to improve some of my mentalism and discussed some theories and some, say, methods that he came up with that no one else does.
So you're really privy talking to him in a way that most other people wouldn't. You're in the industry, kind of.
Well, I've been touring with him for the last few days, and maybe in the last day or so, he's come to warm to me as not another fanboy. I know as a professional performer myself, when people come up to me, they get quite nervous meeting their heroes. And when I met my hero in the last few days, and I have met him before in a professional context, but when I'm sitting backstage with him, someone who I've admired since I was, a teenager, I have to realise, don't be a fanboy. Just look like a colleague, another professional. But then when I...
Remember, people, this is someone who's worked in the industry, and for you to sort of, be like that, but it's hard to do, isn't it? It's hard to just remove your memory of the person and the way you feel about them and relax, isn't it?
But what makes it easy is he is just like the grandpa you've always wanted to have. And when you realise he is just another human being who is a lot more talented and funny and intelligent than I'll ever be. But having said that, he's a human. First and foremost, he's just a really great guy. And backstage, it shines. He's just making jokes. He's, willing to share with a fellow magician who is nowhere near to his level a trick or two. And it's been an absolute pleasure to sit upon a stage and ask him all the questions I've ever wanted to ask him.
Well, when we think of critical thinking, let's ask a seasonal question here. How come most people can get around the critical thinking of Santa, but they don't manage to apply that to a few, other things in their lives, like astrology or crystals?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I know James discusses it in the terms that people have a want. They want, well, it's not so much a want, but they need to believe in something. And I think once you pinpoint what that need is, whether it's a fact that they feel insecure about their lives or they feel like they don't have control and they need to, a psychologist would say, find an external locus of control to explain their situation in the world. And sometimes people feel like they need to have someone to tell them what to do with their lives. Certainly with the skeptic movement, it's really hard to tell people this is how you should believe. But I tell you what, when James Randi says, I think, you have to have compassion, you have to be a critical thinker, then you listen, because he has met a lot of people who are both charlatans and frauds, but also a lot of people who have a genuine need to want to understand, and they are seeking explanations.
And at what moment in your life was the whole Santa conspiracy jig up? Do you remember the moment where you went, hang on a minute?
I absolutely remember it. And I almost did it as a scientific experiment, and I didn't know I was a little naive scientist when I was a child, but my house in Box Hill, where I grew up, didn't have a chimney. But how was I getting Christmas presents every single year?
Right. So Santa's doing some ornate break and enter deal.
That's right. So my hypothesis was, but perhaps Santa Claus isn't real. So I tested it out. My method was to go downstairs, hide behind the couch on Christmas Eve. Results, I saw my parents putting presents underneath the tree, and my conclusion was Santa Claus, it doesn't exist. And then the following year, on the first day of school, I got up at show and tell, and everyone was showing off their Christmas toys and their Christmas presents, and I got up in front of everyone and I said, Santa Claus does not exist. They were mortified.
Popular, yeah.
Well, my friend Stuart at the time, he heckled, he said, that's bull dust, Santa Claus does exist, he puts presents underneath my tree every single year. And I said, that's because my parents break into your house and put them there. Okay, so that's not quite the right explanation, but, that was logical, and I was using my critical mind.
Yes.
And for many people, I have thought about this myself. If I ever have kids, or when I have kids, will I ever dress up as Santa Claus? Will I carry on with this adult delusion, this cultural delusion to give...
It's a tough issue for a skeptic, isn't it?
Well, I believe, it's good from a science point of view and also good from a parenting point of view, because people, when they think about their childhood memories, Christmas is an important, joyful moment about bringing families together. And secondly, it is the first... When a child works out that Santa doesn't exist, it's their first skeptical moment of critical thinking. They've suddenly realised that the world isn't as it always seems, or it's not.
Their parents have been lying to them.
And their parents have been lying to them. However, the kids reach that intelligence level where they do the switcheroo and they go, okay, that's fine, I accept this delusion, so I'll just carry on with it because I know Mum and Dad are still going to give me presents.
Yeah, exactly. There's a benefit.
Yeah. So I think Santa Claus is a good thing because people grow out of it.
Well, thank you for that, and Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. I'm sure you've never heard that before.
Merry Christmas, Maynard.
Earlier this week, Australian skeptics were very saddened to hear of the passing of magician Steve Walker. Steve was a wonderful man, a wonderful showman, a wonderful entertainer, a great magician. But his rapport with the crowd is something I'll never forget. He fronted many skeptics' dinners and events and conventions, and I learnt so much from Steve Walker about relating to an audience, feeling at home on the stage. This tribute to Steve was published at www.skeptics.com.au. Australian skeptics are greatly saddened to hear of the death of one of our staunchest supporters, Steve Walker, who died suddenly and far too early on Thursday, December 11. Past Australian Skeptics President Barry Williams writes, Steve was not only a talented magician, he was also one of those rare people who brighten up the lives of all those who came in contact with him. His use of humour was unsurpassed in making his performances a delight to all who witnessed them. The skeptics owe him an incalculable debt, not only in the innumerable gigs he put on for free of charge, and which drew record crowds to our dinner functions. He performed at our very first convention in 1985, but for his many impromptu performances anywhere a few skeptics were gathered together. Steve's unfailing good humour did much to convince those who knew him that, despite the perception that some might have that skeptics are a humorless crowd of despoilers of other people's illusions, much enjoyment and fun can be gleaned from belonging to Australian skeptics. We may never see Steve Walker's like again, and we are much the poorer for his passing. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Next week, I think we have some more Jo Alabaster with her convention roundup and an interview with George Rabb, thanks to Maynard. Lots of interviews coming up from Maynard from the Australian Skeptics National Convention. Thank you to all those people who subscribe to the Skeptic Zone podcast via PayPal, less than $1 a week. Your subscription, your help, your support simply means you get a show. End of story. If nobody supported the show with those tiny payments, there would be no show. So those people who do subscribe, you know who you are. Thank you. And on behalf of everybody who listens to the Skeptic Zone, thank you. Hey, our guest reporter Heidi Robertson, she sure can write. And she does a good report too. I think she can read a good report. Maybe we can encourage her to give us some more work, some more reports, some more insights from her point of view over the coming months. I think that would be pretty good. Oh, and if you want to hear an interview with me and Maynard on another podcast, why don't you Google Skeptically Challenged by Ross Balch. He interviewed myself and Maynard and a few other people at the convention, and that might make for some entertaining listening. Well, that's enough from me. I'm going to pack up. Yes, I'm going to put Fred in the box. No, Fred doesn't go in a box. He actually sound asleep at the moment. Oh, on his cat post. Yeah, a bit frayed around the edges, the old cat post. Until next week, with lots more reports, this is Richard Saunders, signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.